Now, before we go any further, I want you to notice something else about atheism. It is a standard move by atheists nowadays to simply say they are not asserting that God doesn't exist, but they simply have no belief in God. And since they lack a belief, they don't need to defend their lack of belief.
Tonight, we're going to be looking at Stand to Reason and Greg Kokul. He's put together a really short class on the PragerU style of a class. I seriously think that he thinks that Stand to Reason is a university because that's what he's calling this, is like a university class.
What?
Yeah. It's really weird. Anyways, apparently we're going to learn how atheism bumps into reality, how atheism violates reality, apparently. If you heathens want to fuck around and find out how atheism bumps into and violates reality, then please stay tuned. What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Yeah, I have my infamous sidekick here.
Hi, y'all.
Hi, honey. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good, We're going to get to, I believe it's Greg Kokul. We'll figure out who in the fuck this dude is from Stand to Reason.
He'll probably introduce himself.
Either that or it'll be on the screen, like what his name is.
Gotcha.
All right, Stand to Reason. Are you guys ready to go to Stand to Reason University? I hope you got your notebooks out and you're going to be taking some notes here.
I got my pen. I got my Godless Engineer pen.
Yeah, all right.
And the back of an envelope. That should do.
I believe that will probably be all the notes that you need to take. I'm not even sure if you're going to need that.
Okay.
But let's see what Greg's got for us.
Okay.
Of all of the questions that every human being asks about what's true, or about what's important, or about what's meaningful, there is no more significant question to answer than this one. Does God exist? God's existence is the most decisive issue of life because the answer you give to that one question sets an irrevocable course for everything that follows.
I feel like that's really dramatic. Like, however you answer, does God exist? That sets a dramatic course for everything that follows. I mean, I think that the question, does God exist, is an important question to ask, but
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, but on a personal level, like, is it really that? I mean, to me, that's less relevant than like, what elective do you want to take? Like, but maybe that's because I don't believe in God. So,
well, I also don't really see God changing someone's like behavior all that much, because like, if you do believe in God and let's say you worship God, you're still prone to doing all of the bad shit that, that anybody that doesn't believe in God would be, could possibly do as well. And I mean, the religion doesn't exactly have a great track record when it comes to that particular thing, because it's like, you can't sit there and be like, oh, well, however you answer this question is going to determine the course of your life. It's like, no, it seems like it's just going to go the way it would have gone, even if I didn't believe in God.
And the average person is just going to be either I go to church on Sundays or I don't. Like,
right. Unless because you believe in God, you go into like evangelicalism, hardcore preaching, or witnessing, or anything to do directly with the religion. I think that's the only way that it can affect your life.
Right. Well, I think the vast majority of Christians are, and I mean, I don't have data to back any of this up, but if you just think about it, think about how many Christians there are versus how many like hardcore evangelical kind of people there are. I mean, there aren't a lot of Greg Locks out there, right?
No.
Thankfully. And not that they are few and far between, but there are certainly more like just normal mainstream folk. And now in this particular instance, they're talking about God as if it's the only option, right? The Christian God. So they're talking about Yahweh God. And if you're talking just about that, then the average mainstream Christian is just, they're going to go to church. It's not really going to impact their life in super significant ways.
Right.
So I'm not sure this is the most important question ever.
Now, in this course, you will learn that we don't have to guess when it comes to answering the question about God's existence. Instead, God's fingerprints, so to speak, are all around us. In other words, the world around us, the real world, is thick with evidence for God.
It's thick. evidence.
As opposed to the fake world, the real world. Because he put a lot of emphasis on the real world.
He kind of gets into that a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But just know that it's thick with evidence for God. Evidence for God is a thick boy.
Well, I also like how he's like God's fingerprints. Maybe is he meaning fingerprints like actual literal fingerprints, or is he using fingerprints like in a figurative?
I think he's using it in a figurative way.
Okay.
I think he's trying to reference like just evidence for God, or evidence that God had a hand in our reality.
Is everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, we bump into it all the time. In our sessions together, I'll walk you through a thoughtful analysis of 3 of the key bumps that evidence God's existence. Details of reality that Christianity can make sense out of, but atheism cannot. I'm Greg Kokul for Stand to Reason University. Let's get started with atheism bumping into reality.
Stand to Reason is not a university. Stop using that word, people. This is wrong.
This is a course, honey. I don't care what you say. This is a course.
All right. Well, then this is Godless Engineer University. And right now, y'all are being educated.
I really am kind of getting tired of all these like fake ass universities just using the word university. It's a lot like, what's that Express oil change place? I think it's just called Express Oil Change. Mm-hmm. And they have tire engineer up there. Like they got tire engineers. That I feel like it's just placing like engineer on the end of whatever fucking word, and you're an engineer. I don't think that just because you're putting out these shitty fucking videos on YouTube that makes you a university. I mean, if that were the case, then every single video of mine has been a course.
University course.
And it's Godless Engineer University. But, you know, I'm not so pretentious that I'm going to put that in my fucking name, title, or present my videos as anything other than a dim-witted hillbilly's trek through fucking, you know, Christian evangelicalism or whatever. Like, I feel like I don't present myself as any kind of like expert in anything, or that any of the information in my videos would fully educate you on any one topic.
Yeah.
Like, definitely look up information for yourself.
I mean, I learned stuff from your videos, but I still wouldn't consider your videos courses or classes. And it's certainly not a university.
And I would definitely not present them as such.
Yeah, that's the problem to me, is that these places present themselves as like educational forums. And they're to the point of calling it a university, which I think is really misleading and dishonest, which kind of tracks with evangelicalism. So.
Yeah.
Someone once said that reality is what you bump into and sometimes injures you when you don't take it seriously.
Yeah, when that reality starts twerking with their thick ass butt, just and then it bumps into you, it's like, oh shit, fucking reality.
Maybe that's the roaming gravity wells that like randomly
that cause you to stumble. Anytime you trip over anything, trust me, it wasn't whatever you tripped over. It was a roaming gravity well,
or reality bumping into you,
or reality twerking on you. Yeah.
Now I'm here in my shop, and I got lots of tools here, and some of them are really dangerous. But the most dangerous tool in my shop is my table saw. It's
your mouth.
Sorry.
I feel like the most dangerous tool in this entire video is Greg Kokul.
You know, to call him a tool would be unfair because tools are useful.
Good point.
It's driven by a 3-horsepower motor. I got a 10-inch blade, and man, that'll take your fingers off just like that if you're not careful. So how do I stay safe in my shop?
You wear a condom.
You heard it here first. The way you stay safe in the shop, in like a workspace like that, is to wear a condom.
Hey, you know, we always have to have safe practices.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I look closely. I pay attention. I think things through.
I would not want to be in a shop like a little, I don't know what kind of like metalworking or woodworking shop he's got there. If his approach to does God exist, or the question of God, give any kind of indication as to how much care he takes place in that workspace, no, he needs to have like 911 on call every single time he goes in there. Okay, condom or not.
And that's exactly how we're going to approach the question of God's existence. So first, we need to define our terms here. Now, we know what theism is. It's a belief that there is a personal God, a conviction that God exists. So what's atheism? It's just the opposite. Atheism, now watch this, is the belief that there is no God. King David wrote, "The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands." All right?
Okay, so I have a lot of problems with both of these definitions. Okay, for one thing, that is not the definition of theism, because he says that it's specifically a belief in a personal God.
I think that is the definition of theism.
Well, no, a belief in a God or deity.
Well, so deism is a belief in a non-personal God. Theism is a belief in a personal God, an interactive.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure that's the difference between theism and deism.
Belief in the existence of a God or gods, especially belief in one God as the creator of the universe, intervening in it and sustaining a personal relation to his creatures.
Yeah, so belief in a personal.
Well, it says especially the belief in the personal God.
Mm-hmm.
But the general definition is belief in the existence of God or gods.
Well, sure, but especially a personal. If you're trying to separate it from deism, then theism is a personal God. Deism is not.
Okay.
A non-interactive.
Well, that's fine. But what he said was that atheism is a belief there is no God, but he's got it written on the screen, a belief there is no personal God.
Which would actually drop deism into the atheism category.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah, I feel like there's some inconsistency in these definitions.
Well, yeah, not only that, but I feel like it's a weird thing that people do whenever they try to define atheism, and I utterly hate
religious people.
Yeah. I utterly hate it, okay, because they always get it wrong. Now, theism being a belief in a personal God, you would think that the negation of that would be having no belief in a personal God.
Mm-hmm.
And but they swap it around a little bit, and they say that it's a belief that there is no personal God.
Well, so from a philosophical standpoint, it is a belief. Atheism is a belief. Okay, so if you look at it from a philosophical standpoint, but most people who are just regular old atheists who aren't into philosophy would not categorize it that way. So there are different ways to define things from different standpoints, but I mean that's not going to be your common use.
Well, okay, so here's what I want to hear from all you heathens out there or non-heathens is for my particular position. I think that my position's pretty much what yours is too, and that's I don't believe in a God, but I don't know if one exists.
Yeah, I don't believe in any gods because there isn't any evidence of them. I've never seen any evidence. I've never been convinced by anything that anybody's brought forward as supposed evidence of any deity at all. There are certainly God figures in many religions that exist within those religions, but exist within reality. Not so.
Right.
In my opinion, not so.
My point is that you don't know if a God exists, but you don't believe in one.
Right. I don't know for sure. I mean, there's tons of shit we don't know. Right. And, so, I mean, I can't say in the entire universe and outside of reality, because that's another thing that they've talked about, God exists outside of reality, but also within reality. So I don't really know how that works. But I mean, there's no way for us to know that. I don't think. Right.
So for all of the philosophers or, anybody else that wants to answer the question, what fucking label should I use in order to describe me? Because
you should use whatever label you want to use.
Oh no,
it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Well, no. I am going to use the label because the label that I prefer to use is agnostic atheist. I feel like it completely explains my position in those couple of words. But my point is that people that use this particular definition and want to stick atheism strictly in the hard Gnostic atheism category, what in the fuck would I be then? Because whenever I hear of somebody not believing in a God, I immediately think atheist. Now, like Casey said, most people are not talking, out of their ass from the Stanford Encyclopedia of fucking philosopher bullshit. Okay. And most of the time when people are talking about atheism, it's just people that don't believe in a God. And, you know, in the past, atheism has been people that don't believe in a specific set of either gods or a God, or one particular God. So that, I mean, they would identify them in that way too. So I'm just wondering out there, what would you label me as if you only go with this one definition, which is kind of stupid when you think about the English language or languages in general?
I think it's silly to rabbit hole into a single definition. There are various ways. What's important when you're having conversations about something, which this guy does, and so I think it's good that he does this, just define how you use a word. Right. And then when you define how you use it, don't try to force another person to use that same definition. Now, you might want to agree on a definition for a purpose of a conversation, and that would be okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the definition that everyone in the conversation uses. It might just be an agreed upon for the use of that particular conversation. Mm-hmm. So just so long as when you're speaking to other people, you understand the way that they're defining terms. And the problem that I've run into a lot with people is you don't have to agree on, like, you don't both have to use the same term. Like, right. Everybody doesn't have to define it the same way. And that's okay. I'm not a proponent of the lack theism. I don't subscribe to the whole lack in belief in gods. That's not something I use. I don't agree with that. But I'm fine if other people use that and that's what they think. Right.
But I do have to say that on particular God definitions, I am very Gnostic about those. So like the Christian God, for example, which is what STR is going with here, I would say that I have an active belief that God does not exist. Like I think that's fair. I'm hard atheist on that particular God. So working within these definitions, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's just that I think that characterizing atheism as only this one thing is it's like an equivocation fallacy.
I just think it the way that he defines these two terms together, like I said, you could drop deists in the atheist category, right? The way that he defines this, and I think that's not going to work. So logically, it doesn't flow, right? So these can't logically be definitions that one would use, but he does use them. So
yeah, but I do also want to say that it's perfectly fine if y'all have sort of complex, nuanced positions on the question of does God exist, or of what you think about God in general, because like mine's kind of complex, because like I
think a lot of people's are, especially if you've deconstructed from religion.
Yeah, me being a hard atheist on Yahweh doesn't say anything about whether or not I believe in like
Krishna.
Krishna. I was thinking more of a deistic or like a just an ambiguous definition of a god, like
a supernatural, all-powerful being.
Right. I feel like I have two different positions on those, so it's okay to have complex, nuanced positions on this particular topic.
Sure.
The atheist, by contrast, says the cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. Now,
I don't say that.
I don't know who says that. It just, like, he's got a quote up underneath it, and it just says, the atheist. What fucking atheist? Actually give me a goddamn citation, because I don't know anybody that's ever said this. And, honestly, like, the cosmos is all that ever is, or ever was, or ever will be. Like, I don't know who can confidently say this, because I don't know.
Is that like a Sagan or
I feel like if it was a well-known person,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, he would have said it.
He wouldn't have just said the atheist, because he pulls out his Dawkins card later. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's all that ever has been, or all that there ever will be. I mean, there's no way to know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the cosmos is in existence now, but I mean, there's so much of the cosmos we don't know anything about.
Right. I mean, like, I can't even say like the supernatural doesn't exist, like as like as like something that I know. Like, mm-hmm. I don't know if the supernatural exists or not. What I can tell you is that I haven't seen any evidence of the supernatural, so I don't believe in the supernatural.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very different.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, they're two very different but nuanced things there. It's what you know and then what you believe, regardless of what you know.
But I still think this is weird to say the atheist says this as if it's something common that atheists think. And I mean, maybe there are some atheists that do think this, but I don't know. I don't like when stuff is presented in this fashion. I don't care for it.
Now, before we go any further, I want you to notice something else about atheism. It is a standard move by atheists nowadays to simply say they are not asserting that God doesn't exist, but they simply have no belief in God. And since they lack a belief, they don't need to defend their lack of belief.
I mean, that's true.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is why I think, and I know that Casey disagrees with me about this, but like people saying lack of belief, are I feel like that's roughly equivalent to saying I don't believe in like I don't believe in a God. And
See, I think lack of belief is more in line of agnosticism.
Oh, I mean, I can I guess agree with that maybe. But this right here is a prime example of why I think that the two are being equivocated with each other. But I mean, I don't know why he's presenting this as a problem. Like, oh, atheists think they're not making any kind of claims. I mean, for the most part, most atheists out there, like in a general manner, are not making a positive claim. They're just saying, I'm not convinced by, any of the evidence that I've seen so far. So I guess I don't know. In order to be an atheist, according to Greg Kokul, you've got to make the hard atheist position. Like, you've got to have that position. It's
because I think that he's more in line with the philosophical definition.
Oh, yeah, he's a philosopher, bro.
Yeah. But it's, I don't know. I don't feel there are certainly some atheists who make positive claims. There are no gods. There are certainly atheists who do that. And that's fine. They can defend that as they wish, or as they're requested to, or as they feel necessary. But someone who doesn't make those claims does not need to defend them. And this isn't like a gotcha moment. This isn't like we're just trying to get out of defending our position. No, that's not what this is. And I feel like that's how it's coming across from the way he's communicating this comes across to me. Like he's like, well, atheists are just tricky and they use this to get out of something. And I don't think that is the case for the vast majority of atheists. Right.
And I mean, setting aside the talk of knowledge, like Gnostic, agnostic thing, I would genuinely like to know what he would think about somebody that legitimately just doesn't believe in any of the current gods that are out there, or any of the deities. Like what would he call it? Because he's obviously saying that these people that claim, oh, I just don't believe, are either not atheists or they're atheists that are trying to get out of defending their position. And so I'm just kind of curious as to what would he call those people? Would he call them agnostics? Because to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because agnosticism is about whether or not you know something. And technically agnosticism is I don't know or I can't know about it.
And there are definitely people like true agnosticism, or people in agnosticism in relation to religion, because agnostic is a word that can be used for anything, just to say you don't know about something. Like, I'm agnostic about this particular thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be used in a religious sense, but in the religious sense, maybe there are definitely people who just don't know what they believe. And that's fine too. I mean, that's fine too. If you've considered gods, but you're just not sure how you feel about it or what you think about it, or you decide that you don't know enough about it and you don't fucking care. You're totally apathetic about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's completely fine. That's okay. Like, all positions in this, everything on the spectrum is completely fine. And I don't see why he has such a big problem. And I really don't care what he calls anybody. My problem is that he's making it out like we're trying to get out of something, but we're not trying to get out of anything. Like, I don't know what else I can explain to you from my particular position to say I don't believe in gods, because I've never seen any evidence of gods, and anything that has been presented to me has just not been compelling.
Right.
Like, I don't really have to justify that in any way.
Because, I mean, you're not making a positive claim about anything.
No, I'm just saying I don't believe.
All right. Now, I don't think that's exactly intellectually honest, because no one writes best-selling books about their lack of beliefs, all right?
They do.
Well, I mean, but you see, also, like all of the atheist books that have been produced out there, they're not writing about how they necessarily about like their non-belief in a deity. They're writing about the reasons why they don't believe in a deity, right?
Either that or their story of how they deconverted or why they deconverted, or they might be writing about how to deal with death when you don't have the comforts of theism, or when you don't have the comforts of afterlife, how to deal with that, or how to parent as an atheist in a theistic country, or like there are atheists that write books pertaining to atheism that aren't just like not believing in gods. Like that's not typically the sole topic. I mean, there are some, certainly, but some of them are arguments against gods, arguments against religion.
Right.
Like kind of a debunking kind of deal.
I guess my point is that the books and articles and everything like that are written in response to evidence presented for God.
Right.
So, I mean, it's that we disagree with those pieces of evidence. So what's being written about isn't exactly like, oh, I don't believe in a God. There you go. Send it off to the printer.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that.
Thin. It seems thin.
Right. I think that it's intellectually dishonest for him to misrepresent, I guess, atheist literature like that. He's calling us intellectually dishonest because we're not making some positive claim.
Yeah. I don't feel like I need to.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous.
There's a lot of things I don't make positive claims about.
I know.
Atheists are making a case, and the case that they're trying to make is that there is no God. That's their belief. Certainly.
I'm not trying to make that case.
No. So, I mean, he's about to draw a diagram here, but I mean, sure, there are some atheists out there that make this particular hard atheist statement that there is no God. And from what I've seen, they're perfectly fine with defending it. And I can agree with some of their arguments, but I have a problem with being able to know whether or not that's correct, because I don't know. I don't know what kind of deity could exist out there, and with everything that we don't know about reality, there still could be some kind of supernatural force that exists, and so I just simply don't know. And so that's why I go with the agnostic on top of being an atheist.
And see, I don't even care about the God question at all. Like, I know this sounds really weird. I don't. I'm an atheist. I don't believe it, but I really don't care. I think that the whole does God exist argument and debate is super boring and super ridiculous, because neither way can actually prove anything at all, period. So I don't even give a shit about that at all. What I care about and make a case against is religion and how it negatively impacts people in a variety of ways, people and society. And so that's what I care about, how religion and not all religions are harmful. I think the Abrahamic religions are harmful. I think they're harmful to individuals, and I think they're harmful to society. There are some other religions that are harmful. There are other religions that are not harmful at all. But that's what I make a case against, is religion, not God. I don't God or gods, any God. I don't give a shit. I just don't care about that question at all.
Well, so, I mean, I care because people constantly try to prove that God exists, or they try to say that, oh, well, you can't be a moral person unless you believe in God, or...
But what morality? See, that's the thing. They're using a morality base of a specific religion. Mm-hmm. And so that's where my case is. Religion. Mm-hmm. My case isn't with a God. I don't think they exist. If you want to think they do, I don't really care. And if you want to try to prove they exist, fine. I don't really care. I'm not compelled by anything that you say, keep on keeping on, whatever. But it's what people do with religion and how they use it to harm people.
Yeah.
And I don't think that everyone purposefully uses religion to harm people. Like, I think when people indoctrinate their kids, they're trying to do the best, what they think is best for their kids. I mean, not in all cases. There are extreme cases that it's really terrible, but I think these parents still think that they're doing what's right.
Right.
but it's not, it's damaging. And I think that's where my argument is. I could not give a shit less if somebody believes in a God. That doesn't bother me. I just don't care.
So I want to echo that too, because I ultimately don't care whether or not somebody believes in a God. I'm not one of those assholes that goes out there and is like, oh, I can't believe Sherry down the street still believes in God. Can you believe that immature shit? I don't think that you're dumb or stupid or insane or anything like that just because you believe in a God. But where I come in, or where I have an issue, is when somebody tries to present like evidence to suggest that I'm wrong about it or something. And that at that point, I'm like, well, I'm not convinced by these reasons or for these reasons. So
yeah, and I don't care if they think I'm wrong. I just don't care. I care about how it's used to hurt people. And I mean, however anybody wants to believe about a personal God. And I know there are a lot of people who have argued with me about this, because they're like, well, I care because it affects how they think about everything else. And that can be true, but it isn't necessarily true. I mean, one of my very best friends and one of the smartest people I know is Megan from Digital Hammurabi. And she's a Christian and I'm an atheist, and we are best friends.
Yeah.
And we talk all the time. And, you know, somehow she manages to be a well-educated, science-minded individual who understands that the Bible isn't this like infallible word of God, and that everything in the Bible is correct. Somehow she manages to be a Christian and still have reason. And that is absolutely possible. And so she doesn't do anything to inflict harm using her religion onto other people. And so it is irrelevant to me that she believes in a God.
Me too.
I mean, that's just, that question I just don't care. It's what you do with it.
Right.
That bothers me.
They have no belief in God, agreed, but they do have a belief about God. And their belief about God is that God doesn't exist.
I still feel like he's talking monolithically about atheists or about the atheist position, and he's not acknowledging the nuances of the differing positions within atheism. And I mean, he made a bunch of red marks on the screen trying to show that, oh, we have a belief about God. Really, it's just, at least for KC and I, we just simply don't believe in a God. It's not that we believe he doesn't exist. Although I will say, for this particular conversation, which I would take the belief that his God doesn't exist. So within that particular context, I can agree with the way he diagrammed that sentence.
I mean, I just don't believe in gods. I don't care how he wants to fucking diagram whatever. Like, I do have a belief about your God, just like John said. I have a belief about your God. As far as gods in general, I don't have a belief about them or in them. I just don't think that what he's saying here is really representative. I mean, it might be representative in the way that he defines atheism, but he acts like that's the only way it goes.
So it's not like they don't have to make a defense for their view, since they're not really asserting anything. They are. They're asserting that God does not exist. And that is their belief about God that they are holding and advancing. Okay.
It's not a trick. And that's what I think he's being super dishonest about this, because it's not a fucking trick, dude. It's just we don't believe in gods. I don't know why this is such a big deal for you.
Well, because the reason why it's a big deal is because it puts him on an uneven playing field, and he's trying to even the playing field in the discussion. So he's manipulating the conversation so that it works out best for him.
Well, he's doing the evening the playing field by using the philosophical definition.
Well, right. But I mean, the reason why he has to do that is because he cannot argue against somebody that's not putting forth like a positive belief in something.
Yeah.
And so what he has to make it look like real atheism TM is the hard atheist position of saying that no gods exist whatsoever. He has to make it out to be that way so that he seems like he's got the better position.
But we're the ones being dishonest.
Right. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's super dishonest of him. And no, we're not playing tricks. That's why I asked earlier, for people to tell me, well, if you hold to this particular position on atheism, what in the fuck would you label me? Because it seems to me like under their definition, I would not be an atheist. So it's like, what in the fuck am I at that point?
Oh, see, I just don't care what any of them think.
Oh, I don't care what they think. Like, I'm going to identify as an agnostic atheist, but for the purposes of this conversation and to point out how...
What would you label someone who is not making a knowledge claim?
Right.
Is what you're asking.
Right.
I would think that they would label them, and if from a philosophical standpoint, I think that would be labeled as agnostic.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like the terms as they're philosophically defined are
that's not how they're
too
commonly
rigid,
used.
and that's just not how they're used anymore.
It's not how they're commonly used. It's how they're used in philosophy, and that's fine. But that's not how they're commonly used. And so I feel like when you're having these types of conversations and trying to argue against atheism, you might want to use definitions or arguments that are against what's commonly said and done and practiced and used by atheists.
Right.
Like not what some philosophy book says atheism is.
Did you almost say philosophy, bro?
I think I was going to say philosophical, but I meant to say philosophy. I don't know.